For all you parents out there, as soon as you found out that you were pregnant, you probably started dreaming about your child, right? You started thinking about what are they going to be like? Who are they going to act like? What are they going to look like? What's their life going to hold? And maybe you even prayed for them. But if you were praying for your child from the moment that you found out that you were going to have them, were you asking God for things that you wanted, or were you asking Him for what He wanted? Were you asking Him, what do you want for this child? Why did you give them to me? What purpose do you have for them? How can I best be a good parent to this specific child for the purpose that you have for them? Show me what gifts you've given to them. Show me how to nurture those gifts and, direct them in the right paths so that when they are grown, that they'll best fulfill the purpose that you have created them for. Are we praying those things? The reason I ask this is because the man in our story today does just that. As soon as he is told that his wife is going to have a child soon, the angel that comes and tells his wife, he says, your child is going to be set apart from the very beginning for God's purposes. From the moment the woman comes to her husband and tells him that this man has come and told her this thing, he immediately goes to God and prays, God, please send the man back to us so that he may teach us how to raise this child. And I thought, what a wonderful prayer. We should all be doing this. And when the man does come back to him, he asks him, what specifically should we do to raise this child so that he can fulfill this purpose that you have for him? And again, I thought this is what we should all be doing as parents. And so we're going to be talking about that today, going through this story of this man and his wife and the son that they're promised, and what we should be doing to dedicate ourselves and our families to Him from the very beginning. So, if you remember, we're in the book of Judges, and the last judge was named Abdon. And it says in Judges 13, in verse 1, it says, again, the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. And so if you've been, following this at all, you know the pattern. Again, the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. Every time after their judge dies, then they do evil in the sight of the Lord, and God eventually turns them over to some sort of other nation to oppress them. And so that is what's happening here. And the Philistines were a people that were originally from the island of Crete. And when their invasion of Egypt failed, they ended up settling on the coast of the Promised Land. And when the Israelites invaded the Promised Land, remember, they were supposed to get rid of all the people living there, but they did not get rid of these coastal people. And so they ended up staying there on the coast. Now, the Hebrew name for coastal people is Philistines. And so that's just who these people are. They're the people that live on the coast, and they're called the Philistines. And they had 5 kings that ruled this area. And since the Israelites did not eradicate them from their land, they're continuously fighting with these people. And in some sense, they're still fighting with the Philistines, because when the Romans finally took over the land of Israel, as kind of a jab to them, they called the land, instead of Israel, they renamed it Palestine. And Palestine was the Greek name for coastal people. And so they were basically saying, you know how you and the Philistines, y'all have been fighting this entire time over this land? Well, we're going to call this land by their name now. We're going to call your land their name. So just as to taunt you. because they had been fighting against the Philistines all of that time. And so that is where the word Palestine came from. And so, in some sense, the Israelites are still fighting these people. And so these people were, like I say, on the Mediterranean coast in the land that was Judah's land. But remember, Judah had the whole southern part. And so this was only a very small portion of Judah's land, and it didn't really affect them. But they also were settled in the land that Joshua had given to Dan. And Dan didn't get very much land. He just got a little part just north of Judah's land that was on the coast, the Mediterranean coast. And so, since the Philistines lived there, they never really let the people of Dan fully establish that land. And so they lived in only like an eastern portion of that. And the rest of the tribe of Dan went to the north and conquered land there. And then they ended up just renaming the land in the north Dan and basically forfeited the land that Joshua had given them in the first place. So these are the people that God has given the Israelites over to for 40 years, it says. And it's kind of only fitting that since they took Dan's land, that God allows the next judge, the judge that would judge the Philistines, to come out of the land of Dan. And so in verse 2 of chapter 13, it says, "Now there was a certain man from Zorah of the family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had no children." Now, the place Zorah was on this eastern side of the part of Dan that God had given to them, and just north of Judah. So, kind of on the border of Judah, on the edge of the land that the Philistines were occupying. And so, this is where Manoah lived with his wife, who was unable to have any children. And then in verse 3, it says, "The angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, 'Indeed, now you are barren and have no children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Now, therefore, please be careful to drink no wine or similar drink, and not to eat anything unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor shall come upon his head, for the child will be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines.'" So a Nazarite was a person that dedicated themselves fully to God. And normally this was something that was temporary. It was a voluntary action, and a person would say, "I want to dedicate myself to God for X amount of time." And then in number 6, God lays out all of the stipulations for a person that wants to dedicate themselves fully to God and take this Nazarite vow. And the 3 things that a person had to do in order to be fully dedicated to the Lord was not to shave his head or cut his hair, not to eat anything from the vine or any strong drink. So that means no wine or grapes and nothing else that is alcoholic. And then also not to come in contact with any dead bodies. These are all of the things that they were supposed to do. The bodies were unclean, and so they weren't supposed to come in contact with them. And so God says, now your son is going to be a Nazarite from the very beginning. He isn't making a choice to become a Nazarite like most people do. I'm telling you that he will be a Nazarite from the time of conception, and therefore you also have to take the Nazarite vow, not eat anything that would be bad for him, no unclean food, nothing from the vine, no drinks that are alcoholic, because I don't want you to contaminate him, because from birth he is going to be a Nazarite, and he will be a Nazarite until his death. So his is not voluntary or temporary, but normally that is the way that it goes. So she has to do these things while she's pregnant with them. And then he is supposed to not shave his head, or become in contact with anything unclean or drink any alcohol or anything from the vine for his entire life. So these were the stipulations that God gives to this woman. And whenever this man who came to her gives her these instructions, he leaves. And then in verse 6, it says, so the woman came and she told her husband, and she said, a man of God came to me, and his countenance was like the countenance of an angel. Very awesome. Now, it says that some of the verses don't even say like an angel. It just says that a man of God came to me and he was very awesome. His appearance was very awesome, or he looked very awesome. And they say that this phrase, man of God, normally stood for a prophet. But her adding on the very awesome part makes us think that she thinks that he might be more than a prophet. And so that's what she's telling her husband. This man came to me and he was a prophet, or maybe something more important, because he was very awesome in his appearance. And then it says, but I didn't ask him where he was from, and he didn't tell me his name. And that would indicate, an angel would be from heaven. He wouldn't be, from a location there in Israel. And so she doesn't seem to quite understand who he is. So she's trying to just explain this person to her husband. And then she says, this man said to me, behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. Now drink no wine or similar drink, nor eat anything unclean, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. And then listen to what Manoah does immediately after this. This is verse 8. He says, then Manoah prayed to the Lord, and he said, oh, my Lord, please let this man of God whom you sent come back to us again and teach us what we shall do for the child who will be born. We need this man to come back and tell us, how do we raise this special child? We need instruction. I want to know more. And so God grants him this wish, it says, this prayer that he asks. And in verse 9, it says, the angel came back to the woman again, and she was sitting in the field, but Manoah, her husband, wasn't with her. And so she ran in haste, and she hurried to her husband, and she said, look, the man that came to me before, he has come to me again. And so Manoah arose and he followed his wife. And when he came to the man, he said, are you the man that spoke to this woman? And he said, yes, I am. And Manoah said, now let your words come to pass. He's basically saying, I want all of the things that you said to come true. And then he says, what will the boy's rule of life be? And what will his work be? So he's basically saying to him, tell me more about his mission. Tell me what his lifestyle is going to be like. How are we supposed to raise him? Give me more information. And all that the angel says to him is, of all that I said to the woman, let her be careful. She may not eat anything that comes from the vine, nor drink any wine or similar drink, nor eat anything unclean. All that I commanded her, let her observe. And so Manoah is asking, how do I raise this special child? And he basically says, you dedicate yourself and him to me. That's it. Nothing more special than that. Just make sure that your wife dedicates herself fully to me, which is what the Nazarites do. And then make sure that your son is dedicated to me from the very beginning, and he lives a life dedicated to me. That's it. And again, we'll talk about this at the end, but I thought that's the formula for all of us. Dedicate yourself to him and dedicate your children to him and live a life according to his plan. That's it. That's the big mystery of how to raise the children, right? And so it says that after the angel told him this, then Manoah says to him, please let us detain you, and we will prepare a young goat for you. But the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, though you detain me, I will not eat your food. But if you offer a burnt offering, you must offer it to the Lord. For Manoah didn't know that he was an angel of the Lord. So what he's saying is he offered this man some food, and providing that he was a spiritual being and not a physical being, the man said, I can't eat your food. Even if I stay here with you, I can't eat your food. But if you want to, kill a goat for me, then sacrifice it to God. That's what you need to do. And so after Manoah asked him to stay, it says, then Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, what's your name? That when your words come to pass, that we may honor you. And the angel of the Lord said, why do you ask my name, seeing that it is too wonderful? And so he's trying to figure out who he is, because he says, hey, stay with us and eat. And he says, I can stay with you, but I can't eat. And he's like, hey, who are you? I don't know what's going on. Explain to me who you are. Tell me your name. And the angel basically says, yeah, you wouldn't understand even if I told you. He's like, I can tell you my name, but it's not going to mean anything to you. It's too wondrous for you to even understand. It's an incomprehensible name. I can't explain to you who I am. Nothing I say is going to make any sense to you. And so Manoah's like, all right, fine, whatever. And so he takes the young goat and the grain offering and he offers it on the rock to the Lord. He did this wondrous thing while Manoah and his wife looked on. And it happened as the flame went up towards heaven from the altar that the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame of the altar. When Manoah and his wife saw this, they fell on their faces to the ground. And so when the angel of the Lord appeared no more to Manoah and his wife, then Manoah knew that he was an angel, right? He's like, I didn't understand who you were, and now I get it. He's like, you're right. You must have been an angel. And then Manoah says to his wife, we're surely going to die because we've seen God. Now, I need to point out to you that some people believe that this was Jesus, pre-incarnate Jesus. And then others believe that he is just a representative of God. Whichever he was, Manoah believed that he either was Jesus or that he was such a close representation of God that it was as if he had seen God himself. And so Manoah thinks that they're going to die. Now, if he was Jesus, it would make much more sense as to why he says, yeah, my name is too wondrous for you. Like, I cannot explain to you who I am. You're not going to get it, right? That would make much more sense because one, he doesn't know who Jesus is. Two, God can't be explained in a simple sentence. And a word does not describe who he really is. Moses did this too. Whenever God came to him in the burning bush and says, I want you to go to Egypt and free my people, he says, this is Exodus 3:13. He says, if I go to the people of Israel and I say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and then they ask me, what is his name? Then what do I say to them? And God said, I am who I am. He said, here's what you say to Israel. I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel. The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and thus I am to be remembered throughout all generations. And so what God is trying to say is, I just am. I am a being. I just am who I am. I can't explain to you who I am. I'm just me. When my kids were born, we would always ask my father-in-law, do they look like my husband? Is this what he looked like when he was little? Do they look like him? And he would always just say, oh, I think they just look like a little Erica or a little Hayden. That's all. And so he would never tell us, yes, I think that they look like your husband. And that's because they're their own person. They're just who they are. And God says, I just am who I am. I can't give you any better explanation than that. Who I am is a distinct being that is unlike any other. And so that's what Manoah is getting told too. I can't tell you my name. It's too wondrous for you. And so Manoah is afraid that they're going to die because they've just seen God. But his wife is a little more logical. And she says in verse 23, If the Lord had desired to kill us, then he wouldn't have accepted our burnt offering and our grain offering from our hands. Nor would he have shown us all of these things, nor would he have told us these things at this time. So she's basically saying it wouldn't really make sense for him to appear to us to tell us that we are about to have a child and then kill us because he came to us to tell us that we were about to have a child. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. And then also, how am I going to have a child if he kills me because I saw him? And also, he took our offering, which is evidenced in the fact that the flame went all the way to heaven when we offered it to him, and the angel went up with it. Like, none of that makes any sense, Manoah. I know that you're scared, but, get a grip.